name is Kenneth Muyingo, and with me I have a special guest who I'm going to ask in a short while to introduce himself. But if you watch this interview and you would like to write a book, you would like to become an author and write your first book, there will be a link in this video with the bio for you to click and then join the group, become an author and write your first book to connect with other people who are doing exactly the same. And with that said, I would like to ask my special guest to introduce himself to you.
Well, my name is Edwin Musiime. I was born and raised in Uganda, born by parents who hailed from the southwest of Uganda in Kabale. I had a privilege to live within a shadow of a great man. That's my late father, who fundamentally taught me quite a lot. And that's why I keep encouraging parents. It's very important how you raise your kids by what you speak to them and what kind of leader they see. So I learned so much from him. When he passed on in 1994, it was a very difficult time for us as a family because now it meant that family-wise, the economics of the family had to go down. So we had to improvise. And I used to take care, I became a farmer, an entrepreneur without knowing it, because I was rearing cows and selling milk and by the roadside and selling chicken in order to be able to raise school fees. A typical story of a number of African children, really. And then from there, I progressed and took on my first job after high school, working in a restaurant for, it was about, I think, $10 a month, about there. Then I took on my first television job. I've been in television for the last 15 years. I began working with the national broadcaster then. And while at university, of course, I took on 3 jobs because I was trying to quickly level the playing field for opportunities, because I noticed that many people wait to go through school and begin to look for what to do. I had to quickly cut my teeth profession in whatever I had to do. So in a nutshell, that's Edwin Musiime. By calling, I'm a preacher of the word, and of course by skill set, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm the founder and chairman Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs Uganda. I'm a public speaker. I run a company called Crest Group that has business interests in media, real estate, media agency, fashion line, label, and so that's pretty much who I am. And now I've gotten into deeply into writing of books, which I find fascinating, but also interestingly to those that are watching, we're launching the Ed TV channel very soon. It's a lifestyle and business TV channel that will be an amazing hub of a collection of wisdom and thought leadership ingredients that will make better men and better women for our societies.
Profound. Wow, what a profile. Thank you so much for sharing, Edwin. And the aspect of your profile that I want us to zero in on this interview is the author aspect. You have written a book, Joseph Economic Transformation. I have a copy of it here, and it's quite an addition to my library, and I'm super excited about it. And I'm reading it at the moment, and it's really speaking to me in a great way. But I want you to ask, what is the vision that you have for this book?
Well, this book was written as an inspiration to encourage people to begin thinking differently about their lives. Joseph Economic Transformation is a book that will enable whether you're a senator, sitting president, CEO of a company, housewife or mother, child, teenager, it cuts across different genres and age groups. And in this book, my intention or vision was to see people gain personal growth, very importantly, understand how to adopt high impact leadership, step into what they call consummate success. Consummate success is the type of success that we've seen people who had it all in the 20s or 30s, lost it in the 40s or 50s. So how do you gain consummate success? That is success that outlives you as a father, as a mother, that throughout your life, you leave an inheritance or you leave a name or a legacy. Entrepreneurial mastery, developing a legacy building mind, engaging your creation and innovation prowess, of course, engaging in kingdom growth, and enhancing your financial intelligence, and a lot more. So pretty much this book wants to precisely tell somebody the Joseph story, which, when you look at the trajectory of Joseph's life, is a representation of each and everyone's life from a different perspective. When you read his story from birth to the time he becomes prime minister, he's been through ostracization, he's been through betrayal, he's been through jail, he's been through abuse, he's been through psychological torture, he's been through seasons of being rejected by his own family. He's been through the disturbing times when you have to wait for something that is not happening, and the patience to be able to deal with understanding the times and seasons that, all right, if God spoke it and promised it, then he set a time for it. So it is a book that literally transforms anybody's mind to understand that we are in a time whereby all you ever needed to do is understand the assignment on your life, the giver of the assignment, and also being able to discern the times and seasons.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to write this book?
Joseph Economic Transformation. First and foremost, the name Joseph. Joseph as a name means to be added on, to increase. And also in the Hebrew understanding and setup of things, we understand that Joseph was a man who was favored by the father. So Joseph is a typical story set in the 1750 BC scenario, thousands of years ago, who recaptures or captures a story that will keep on reoccurring in our lives. Even when we're long gone, these scenarios will keep on reoccurring. How do I know this? I understand this, that Joseph's great-grandfather had to deal with a similar situation. What is the situation? Presently in the 21st century, we're dealing with economic recessions and depressions. Abraham dealt with a famine. Isaac dealt with a famine. Isaac is the son to Abraham. Jacob, the son to Isaac, dealt with a famine. Now Joseph, the son to Isaac, as well dealt with a famine. But there's a difference. The reason I picked up Joseph was there's a difference on how the three patriarchal leaders deal with the famines. Abraham's dealing with a famine was at a scale of within a state. Isaac deals with a famine within a state as one of the victims, who later emerges victorious, but as one of the victims. Jacob, same story. The story of Joseph differs in many ways and teaches us something. Joseph doesn't deal with a famine as a victim. He confronts a famine in a nation by, first of all, anticipating it. We talk about intelligence. He had the intelligence by the dream that he interpreted to be able to know about the difference between the 7 healthy cows and the 7 lean cows and the 7 health corns and the 7 miserable stalks of corn. So that ability as a leader to anticipate the times. And what's important here, I want you to understand, and the viewers, that the unit measure of anyone's lifetime is time. The unit measure of a destiny is time. And Joseph is the type of character that teaches us about not living life reactionary, but rather living life by, first and foremost, anticipating problems, challenges, and designing solutions for the challenges that we are to face in life. So why pick on Joseph? It's a very elaborate story. It's a very lengthy story. One of the lengthy stories actually in the Old Testament. And I believe there's a reason why the writer significantly tells it to be as long as it is, to the detail, for us to understand the twists and turns of life and how we can emerge on top.
Wow. Very, very inspiring. So all the other three patriarchs that you mentioned, Abraham, Isaac, and
Jacob.
Jacob experienced the famine, but as victims. But Joseph experienced the famine, but as a leader.
Actually, all the patriarchal leaders deal with the famines by walking away from the famines. If you go and read the scripts clearly in the Old Testament, Abraham, Isaac, they all walked away from the famine. Of course, by some of them by the instruction of God, but they had to walk away from a famine. Joseph, the curtains are open and he anticipates a famine coming, and he's the solution. And what I want to encourage people to understand that whichever country you're in, whether you are born in Africa and you're in Africa, or you're African and you're in Europe, or you're European and you're in Africa, it doesn't matter. What is important for everybody to understand is that whichever territory you are in, you've been designated as an influencer in that territory. You cannot play small in any territory you're in. You're an influencer. You are a solution to that environment, to that society. You're not just there to exist. You're not just part of the 8 billion people. You're not a statistic. And people need to understand that you are an answer to the problems that the world is dealing with. And that's what we see in the character of Joseph.
Wow. Powerful stuff. This leads me very well into my next question. There is a lot of information that can be shared about a lot of topics, but I'm curious, how did you choose the topic for the book? I see it's Joseph Economic Transformation. How did you choose the topic?
I chose the topic significantly and predominantly because of when you look at the terminology of economics, it was important for the people that will watch this interview to know that our lives and the global world rotates and levitates around economics. From a homestead level to an individual level to a company level to an economy level, it's economics all around us. And if we don't deal or address with the economic issue of our lives, then we are faced with a challenge on our hands. When you go back to the beginning of things in Genesis, I believe both Christian and Muslims have almost the same account of the creation story, similar patterns, that the God Almighty introduces production. He introduces demand and supply. We see that playing out right from the Old Testament. There's production. In Genesis 1:28, there's a clause in our constitution that's very clear, the kingdom constitution that is very clear. And God bless them. He says, you go multiply, you go produce, multiply, replenish, distribute, have dominion, subdue. Now, this was all economics. When God designs a man and says he should take care of nature, the universe, subdue, take care of everything. Subduing ought not to be seen from a perspective of just having dominion as a dictator, from a dictatorial point of view, but it's from a leadership point of view. Man, take care of fellow man, take care of the vegetation, take care of the animals, take care of the planet, take care of the climate. All this takes us to one key point, economics, which I always emphasize. When I talk economics, I'm not just talking about GDPs of countries and GDPs of economies. I'm talking about the GDP of a household. As a father, mother, husband, wife, or single person in your household, have you yet mastered the basics of economics? Have you yet mastered the principles of earning an income, saving an income, and investing an income, and multiplying your wealth? So the choice for this book was very timely in the times we're in. We last experienced a depression when you go away from the Abrahamic times and Joseph and Isaac times and Jacob times and Joseph times, in the New Testament, we don't necessarily experience so much of a scenario of this nature. But talking about present day age, you go back to 1929, where we experienced that great, terrible economic depression. And then, of course, after World War II, we had never experienced such a thing as we're experiencing today. 2008 was a long time ago where we experienced another recession. And today we're at a risk. When you look at all the news all over, we're at a risk of experiencing, it's a kind of a V, it's almost like a V. Well, economists are still discussing whether it's a V-shaped type of recession or L-shaped or U-shaped. Today I won't get into the details of that. But what's key to understand here is that post-COVID is going to be quite very tough economically. What I capture in this book is not for you to sit down and sit back and wait for the post-corona times, but rather chisel or design the life after COVID right now. So this book literally points us to that wisdom to understand how to anticipate the times, design a lifelong plan on how you exist and thrive, not just survive, but thrive through the ups and downs. And I always tell Christians who think life, God is so good, life is just going to be upwards. No way. And if your prophet told you that, I'm sorry about that. Life will have its lows, ups. And it doesn't discriminate. When the depression comes, recession comes, it doesn't discriminate between skin color. It doesn't discriminate between ages. It doesn't discriminate among religions. It affects everybody. So wisdom that you pick from here is, how do you navigate through the tough times of life and see yourself again succeeding and living your dreams?
Indeed. Wow. Thank you. It's this morning I was just reading in Ecclesiastes about there being a season and a time for everything, and this it connects in very well with this, and it leads me very well into my next question. I'm reading the book myself, and I see that it's very well written and very well organized, and I wonder, do you consider yourself as a naturally talented writer, or is writing a skill that you've developed over time?
That almost is similar to a question that I was asked recently by a journalist who was excited to meet me. She's like, tell me, what does it feel like to be a self-made? I'm like, oh, hold on a bit there. In my vocabulary, there's no such a thing as self-made. No way. And I know that the world keeps lying to people about self-made billionaires and self-made trillionaires. And there's no such a thing as self-made.
Yeah.
The makings of a man have several layers. For instance, I'll give an example. If today, Muyingo, you were a billionaire, you cannot stand and say you're self-made. You were born by parents. Exactly. You were designed and pre-planned by a God who gave you his wisdom and the resources within you. Yeah. You had teachers that taught you. You had that one person that you went to and he gave you some advice. So we are all made by different things, above all God. But so when you talk about writing, frankly speaking, I'm not going to sit down here and lie to you, oh yeah, naturally I was born to learn it. As a matter of fact, I've been watching a very interesting documentary that designs or draws distinctions between men that were born with talents and men that were not necessarily born with the talents, but grew a skill set and became disciplined in that area and actually even succeeded beyond those that were talented. So my instincts to write were so much about, I had a story to tell, I have free-flowing ideas that have been imparted in me by two things: my experiences in life, and two, by revelation. And those are the two kinds of knowledge we have in life. So coupled with that, I'm an ardent reader. So I read a lot, and in reading a lot, it has inspired me. Keyword being inspiration. And some of the greatest writers that I have read about were not necessarily natural talents to writing, They were men and women. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you are naturally talented. If you don't have a story to tell, then I don't know what you're going to write. Yes,
Yeah.
you're naturally talented, but you got to have a story to tell.
Indeed.
You got to have an idea you're sharing with the world. You've got to have a narrative. So I
Yeah.
think for me, a combination of understanding that I have several stories to tell and I have ideas that are free flowing. I'm inspired by those, the need to send out such wisdom, send out such knowledge. So that's what makes up my skill set as a writer.
Wow, it's very well said. It's I'm reminded of something. Somebody said, "Hard work and skill beat talent when talent fails to work hard." And
Yeah.
sometimes people say, "Yeah, I'm a natural talent on this," but if you don't put in the work, and the aspect that you mentioned about our experience and the inspiration that we get, I think those are the two most powerful combination as far as bringing out value to the world.
Well, I think when you think about it, Kenneth, whether you're in the world of sports, if you talk about Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, if you talk about Marcus Rashford, you talk about Wayne Rooney, David Beckham, Zinedine Zidane when he was still a player, these are guys who are probably talented in the world's eyes. These guys are very hardworking. If you took off a moment to just watch a video clip of Cristiano Ronaldo having his session of a workout, you'd go like,
Yeah,
wow. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the work. So that's the whole idea, really.
indeed. Wow, wow. And when I hear you talking about writing and what you've understood from where it comes from, are you working on anything else at the moment?
Oh
Should
yeah,
we
yeah.
something else besides Joseph Economic Transformation?
Yeah, I've previously worked on a book, The Ugandan Dream. That's a very fascinating dream about our dream as an African economy. We hear about the American dream, but I was inspired to put together a piece on the Ugandan dream. I'm trying to get the manuscripts of the book. I wrote it and I just I don't know, for some reason didn't publish it. But the other day I was looking at my shelf and I landed on it, and this was 7 years ago. And I read through it, I was like, wow. So I'm trying to pick together the manuscript so that I can have a volume 2 revised edition for it and get it out on the market. So I've, of course, the Joseph Economic Transformation book. Now I'm working on about 5 books that need to be released this very year. One is the post-COVID era, Living for a Prepared Future. This is a very interesting book that's helping people put together a blueprint, an actual blueprint for their future. It is a book that's not necessarily talking about the tragedy of what COVID has done to us, but it is a book that gives foresight to what if this happens again? What if this reoccurs again? What if tomorrow there's going to be a war? What if tomorrow you are going to be, God forbid, what if tomorrow you find yourself incapacitated as a husband in a home and you can't work anymore? Did you plan for those days? Did you anticipate those days? So for me, COVID is just a precursor of the tough times that at times can lie ahead of us, which again is a representation of what I wrote in the Joseph Economic Transformation book. There's a sense of a pattern following through. I'm working on a book on being a player in the real estate industry. I run a construction company. So I'm writing a book on understanding real estate, investing in real estate, and being a part of the whole real estate ecosystem. So that's another very interesting book that I'm working on. Then I'm also working on a very interesting book about demystifying the mystery of China, understanding the brand China. Now, this is a book two years ago, I took a trip to China and visited quite a number of provinces in China, and I related with a number of people, business leaders and organizations and institutions, and I wanted to understand clearly what the mantra is. What is brand China about? The China that we all think as communist China. What is it about? And I was so fascinated by a number of things: the work ethic in China, the integrity of people, the hard work they put in, the commitment workers put in, It was so fascinating. So it's a very interesting book that will thrill so many people that are out there. Then, of course, I'm working on the 7 types of capital. You've heard me talk about that before. The time, social capital, the intellectual capital, the physical capital, the financial capital, and all that. So those are some of the books I'm working on at the moment, and they have to be released in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
5 books in 2020. You are a man of action in it. And what would you tell me is the one thing that has happened to you personally that has had an impact on you writing? If you say you're going to write 5 books in this year, 2020, there must be something that has happened personally that has impacted you to the extent that you say, I gotta put this out.
The single most writing that hit me so hard and I woke up was Hosea 4:6. My people perish for a lack of knowledge. My people don't perish because of HIV. My people don't perish because of COVID-19. My people don't perish because of cancer. They perish because of the lack of knowledge. What does this mean? My understanding of this is that shocking revelation. COVID today would not be the COVID we're experiencing if there had been a leader, if there had been leaders who actually were leaders enough to be able to utilize all the intelligence and wisdom that they needed as leaders. The difference in life, when Hosea 4:6 happened to me as a writing, it impacted me so hard to be able to understand the revelation and understanding that the difference between the different worlds and different lives is what one side knows and what the other side doesn't know. Bill Gates is Bill Gates because of what he knows. The difference between me and Bill Gates right now is what he knows that I don't know from the perspective of wealth creation. The difference between Nigeria and America is what America knows and what Nigeria doesn't know. The struggle between China and the United States of America is not so much about what China is producing or not producing. It is so much about intelligence, what China knows that America doesn't know, what America knows that China doesn't know. So therein lies the biggest gap, that there's a huge information gap, yet we're in an era, 21st century is an era where we are information driven. No two things about it. You can't even, it's a classic experience of the lives that we're living today. So that, when that occurred to me, I realized that I need to quickly try my best and produce as much as I can from my experiences and my revelations, and release as many works as I can for people to be able to access information, knowledge. So that for me is what really created that turning point for me when it comes to writing.
Indeed. And very well said, because knowledge is indeed the currency of the 21st century.
Yeah.
And I'm reading the book personally, and I've been greatly inspired. And I thought, I have a question for you from the book. In chapter 13, you talk about creation and innovation.
Yeah.
And the lesson there is you cannot be left behind in the act of creation. In the world of innovation, there is always more room. Take off time and reflect on what has not been done before and be moved to create. And take off time to reflect on what has been created and could be better and innovate. Great creators are instinctive. They dream of the future and create what is required for a better world. If someone reads this and they get to this point and they are thinking about starting to create and innovate something, what would you tell them is the best place to start?
Albert Einstein is a quote that I start with in that chapter. He says the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. So this is the thing I always tell people. behind every innovator, there was such a great inspiration to innovate. There must be a reason why. You don't just innovate for the sake of innovating. You just don't. As a matter of fact, if it was just for the sake of it, I think we would be seeing so few innovations and creations in the world today. Most of the great, if not all the greatest innovators that I know of and creators that I know of were backed up by a purpose, a cause. There was a problem that disturbed them so much. I mean, when you think about, is it Albert Einstein that discovers light? Albert Einstein, was that?
Thomas Edison, the light bulb?
Thomas Edison, the light bulb, right? So when you think about him, he's disturbed by darkness. When you go behind Thomas, there must be a disturbance he heard about darkness.
Yeah.
I mean, Gucci or Calvin Klein or Chanel Coco or Lacoste is so disturbed by the lack of style and swag and coolness and chicness in style and realizes people just want to put their A game forward by looking good and dope, and here they are, boom. So there must be something that inspires you, that ignites you. That's how you're able to stay up all night long, because innovators, they put in the work. And I also like to give the example of David in the manuscript in 1 Samuel 17, where we discover a new art of warfare. He shows up at the battlefield. Goliath has been challenging the armies for so long. The first question he asks, he doesn't ask, oh my God, how are you able to even navigate and beat this guy? And there was a description of how tall the guy was, how big the guy was. It's just like it would be. I've had challenges by some guys in the US and the UK who tell me, I want you to mentor me and I want to get into entrepreneurship, but you see the systems here, not like in Africa. They're a bit different here. And man, it's kind of really tough and all kind of thing. Yes, I know it's tough. So was it for David. Yeah. But when the guy shows up, he asks the question, what shall be given to the man that can kill that guy? Oh, your family will be exempted from taxes. You will marry the king's daughter. You will, oh, wow. The returns on this investment are amazing. The returns on this innovation are amazing. And David, he gets 5 stones, 5 smooth stones. There's a reason why, of course, there's a description into detail of the smooth stones. It has a lot to do with the skill set. Again, an innovation. Why did he think of smooth stones? Somebody else might think, if I get some rugged, rough stone, it could do the job better. So innovation, again, is that art where you draw distinctive lines between you and the rest. Somebody was challenging me and saying, "Nah, Edwin, I don't think you're going to be effective. You can't do all those things. You got to get one thing and focus on that one thing." Okay, yeah, you have a point, but it's your point. It applies to you. I cannot be one dimension. I cannot 2 dimension, and I cannot be 3 dimension. As a matter of fact, if I had more time on earth, there's so many other things I should be. Get the point. So innovation ought to be driven by, there must be a cause. There must be a cause you are trying to address. There's a problem you're trying to solve. And then more importantly, there's a future you're trying to create. There's a future, there's something you're trying to redesign for the world to be a better place. So that's what I would say really to anybody. And this applies to anybody, anywhere in the world. I know of Nigerian friends of mine who are doing business in New York that are rubbing shoulders with the A-listers of New York millionaires. And so are Ugandan or Kenyan, not sit down and tell me, oh, you see the systems in the Western world. It doesn't matter where you are. Great innovators master the art of beating systems. That's what they do. You've heard about Ogunlesi Adebayo. Yes. Ogunlesi left Harvard and went back to Nigeria. He's the one of the, I think he's the only African that has done some of the things he has done. He single-handedly walked into London and bought Gatwick Airport. He later on followed with another airport, I think Edinburgh Airport. He's an African. He bought 2 airports. And in the first 2-3 years of the purchase of these airports that were running in losses, he turned around these organizations to be profit-making organizations. Now that's what I'm talking about. Trailblazers, pioneers who are not afraid of their skin color, not afraid of their background. They get into the skin and they sure knock it out.
Wow. Wow. This is powerful stuff. Thank you so much, Edwin. It's really a pleasure. I really enjoy doing these interviews because I get so much value out of them, and then we also are able to give so much value to other people in the world. And if someone watches this interview and they would like to buy the Drugs of Economic Transformation book, first, where can they buy the book? And then second, how can they connect with you? If somebody watches this interview and they say, I want more of Edwin, how can they connect with you?
Quickly, the book can be acquired on Amazon. If you just go on to amazon.com.co.uk, Amazon, you can be able to type in Edwin Musiime Drugs of Economic Transformation book. You'll be able to access the book. I think that's the best way I would recommend for people to access the book. But also, you can follow me on Instagram at Edwin Musiime, and Facebook, my official page is Edwin Musiime. And of course, more importantly, now there's an opportunity to listen to some of the things that I wrote about in the book, Drugs of Economic Transformation. I've launched my YouTube channel, Edwin Musiime. There's a couple of phenomenal speeches or presentations that I've made, conversations that I've had there that will provoke anybody to actually rethink life. So they can get onto YouTube as well, and they'll be able to follow me as well on Twitter at Edwin Musiime. They can be able to follow me there.
Very nice. We'll put the links that you mentioned with this video on Facebook and on YouTube so that people can connect with this information. That's very valuable. My last question, is there something that I did not touch on in the interview that you would like to mention before we finish our interview?
I think what I would close by saying is that we are in unprecedented times, times that we've not experienced before. Since World War II, we've never experienced what we're experiencing. And my concern to the people that are watching this is, I don't know at what point in time you get to watch this interview, but what's more challenging is not even just the Corona times. What's more challenging are the post-Corona times. When this period is over, what happens next? So it's very important for people out there to be able to understand that you've got to put in quite a lot to understand the times and the seasons and how to prepare for the times and the seasons, preparing yourself, your family, and I liken it. This is what I've been telling my proteges, the people that I mentor, telling them that this is almost an enactment of what will happen when we are to retire 60, 70, 80 years and above, where you're in a self-induced lockdown. The government has not told you stay home, but you just have to stay home. So what happens then? Less friends, social distancing then is automatic because you don't have a lot of people around you. The income flow, if you didn't plan it so well, will be cut off, and you cannot go work again. If you're blessed to have children that can take care of you, then hallelujah. But it's very important for us to rethink how we're living our lives. Like I said earlier in the interview, that COVID, it might decimate right now. How about it resurfaces in December? What if?
Yeah.
I know this doesn't sound like faith statements, but what if?
Yeah.
What if another pandemic hits? We're talking about the climate, and someone has readily said that one of the worst disasters humanity will ever face is actually not going to come from a pandemic. It's going to come from the effects of the climate changes. So what if climatic. I have a very interesting friend of mine who, in the side of things, what's happening in the world, he's actually constructing an amazing house with a strange panic room that is underground. It's underground. It's underground. It's it's. But anyway, at the end of the day, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm not trying to give messages of doom. But each one of us has the responsibility of preparing for a certain sure future. Of course, a future that is held by God. But we also know that the sons of Issachar needed to know the times and seasons and know what to do. So this applies to all facets of our lives. Knowing what to do with the money and financial system of things, your physical life, your emotional life, your social life, your intellectual life, all this put together. We need to understand this and know how to plan better for our lives. Thank you, Ken.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Edwin. It's been wonderful.